This is Inside Shale, a feature of the West Virginia Oil and Natural Gas Association. We cover the latest news and information from the industry that is shaping West Virginia. Natural gas is reducing emissions, lowering the cost of energy, and creating jobs. And with natural gas, America is on a path toward a better energy future. Think about it. This is Inside Shale Weekly.
Welcome to Inside Shale Weekly. I'm Hoppy Kercheval. For the last couple of years, one of the key issues in the natural gas industry in West Virginia has been forced pooling or lease integration or whatever name that you want to call it. But when you do horizontal drilling anywhere, it's not like vertical drilling because you need larger tracts of land. And when you do that, there tend to be multiple mineral rights holders. And you have to currently get permission and cut deals with all of the mineral rights holders. Now, that can be a long, arduous process. There can be situations where individual mineral rights holders want a different price or hold out or don't want to sell their mineral rights. Also, there can be issues with ownership of the multiple ownership of the mineral rights, so it gets pretty complicated. Right now, there is a rather difficult and arduous process that one can go through to get access to those mineral rights, and it's pretty difficult, frankly, for all involved. So what has happened is that there's been a proposal last couple of years for forced pooling or lease integration in West Virginia, and last year there was a bill that was worked on for some time, got very close to passing, but failed on the last night of the session on a tie vote in the House of Delegates. So they're going at it again, and once again trying to pull it together is the chairman of the House Energy Committee, Delegate Woody Ireland, a Republican from Ritchie County. He's also co-chair of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, and they once again have legislation to deal with forced pooling or lease integration. And yes, they've given it a new name, the Horizontal Well Utilization and Landowner Protection Act. Woody Ireland joins us on Inside Shale. Woody, hello, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
Well, good morning, Hoppy. Glad to be here.
So what is different about this bill, if anything, from the previous effort last year that failed on that tie vote in the House?
Hoppy, there's two or three things I think that are different about this particular proposal, and the fact that last year's bill did fail gave us an opportunity to go back, relook at some things, perhaps clarify some language that needed to be clarified, and that's what we tried to do in this particular proposal that is before us currently. The current bill does also provide some additional options for mineral owners that were not in the previous bill with respect to participation in the well drilling and production if they want to do that. But most of it has to do with education around the current situation, the current law, and where the industry is moving and the impact of that move on the mineral owners and the landowners.
Woody, give me a few details. We don't have to get too far down in the weeds, but give me some details of how, according to this legislation, it would work if there's a driller who wants to drill a horizontal well, and if there are multiple mineral rights holders, which there will likely be, and if there are a couple of mineral rights holders who don't like the price or don't want to sell or holding out, whatever the issue is, what would be the procedure and what are the benchmarks that have to be met before there can be forced integration?
Hoppy, there are a number of benchmarks, as you say, and the way the process would work, basically, is that the applicant for a drilling unit would have to have 80% of the net acres that would voluntarily consent before they could even apply for the unitization of the remaining up to 20%. Mm-hmm. So, and that is the highest hurdle rate in the country, by the way. So that is a protection for those mineral owners that may not want to consent, and if they are, in fact, put in the pool without their consent, then that application would go before the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. And one part of this bill, by the way, that is extremely important, I think, is that Oil and Gas Conservation Commission would be reconstituted from its current members to 7 members currently. It's currently 5, would go to 7.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be the addition of someone that is a mineral owner but not affiliated with a developing company or a transmission company. So it would be an independent mineral owner would be added to that commission to represent mineral interest, and it would also have the addition of someone from the agricultural community, primarily from the largest agricultural organization, which today is the Farm Bureau, which would represent surface owner and landowner issues on that commission. So it would go before them. They would look at what is going on in the market in that area and make a decision with respect to compensation and lease provisions that would be appropriate for that individual or individuals.
Woody, there's a minimum royalty level, isn't there?
There absolutely is. It is set at 12.5%, and one of the concerns in the past, and still a concern among some people, is they say, well, you're codifying that 12.5% is all we can get. That is not the case. The 12.5% is an absolute minimum, and further, if you are involved in a pool without your consent, there can be no deductions taken from that 12.5%. So the mineral owner would not be paying severance tax, would not be paying market enhancement fees, would not be paying transportation fees, and that has been a significant issue and continues to be an issue for mineral owners. Some developers seem to think that they can take severance taxes out and some other expenses, and this bill specifically says no deductions may be taken from whatever that royalty is, and that royalty cannot be less than 12.5%.
All right. Woody Ireland is with us, delegate from Ritchie County, and he is for yet another year working on a forced pooling lease integration bill. This time it's called the Horizontal Well Utilization and Landowner Protection Act. Woody is also co-chair of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, and this new bill was unveiled this week. It's a 56-page bill. Last legislative session, it failed on a tie vote in the House of Delegates. Let me get to the politics of it, Woody, because it failed with this unusual coalition, if you will. There were liberal Democrats and conservative Republicans who voted against it. Let me talk about your party, the conservative Republicans, whose opposition is based largely on takings, that no matter what you come up with, no matter what protections you have in there, that this is an illegal or improper taking of someone's property, in this case mineral rights. How are you going to address that concern by members of your own party?
Well, Hoppy, the fact is that the courts have looked at this situation many times in the past and have determined that it, in fact, is not a taking. Now, the important thing about this whole deal, and I say deal because it has been, the current proposal is a result of many and most of all the stakeholders are involved in this thing sitting around a table and coming to a conclusion that includes giving up some things that each party would like to have, I say party, stakeholder, and getting some things that they think are important. And that includes the surface owners, the mineral owners, and so forth. Now, when you look at this whole situation, the fact is that there is forced pooling already on the books for deep wells,
right,
which includes the Utica, the Rogersville Shale, and so forth. So if you are against forced pooling, which quite frankly I am against forced pooling, then you have basically 3 choices. 1, do nothing and leave the current code as it is, which provides forced pooling for all the deep strata, or you try to completely do away with a deep well code, which I think is a political pipe dream, or you try to come to some compromise in between, and that's what we've tried to do. And the reason that's important is that Marcellus Shale is obviously a significant gas reserve which we need to develop in a reasonable fashion. But you look at what's down there below that in the Utica and the movement of the industry into the Utica. They have drilled wells in Belmont County, Ohio. They came in at 41 million cubic feet a day. And a good Marcellus well is in the 8 to 14, which is a lot of gas. But we're talking about the Utica in Belmont County high being 41, one in Tyler County, West Virginia at 49 million cubic feet a day, Washington County, PA at 56 million cubic feet a day, Greene County, PA right across the line at 73. And so the movement in the next 4 to 5 years is going to be towards and into the Utica. Mm-hmm. Now, force pooling already on the books for those strata. And then you look at the Rogersville Shale, and I attended a meeting a month or so ago, and the state geologist from Kentucky was giving a presentation, and they had drilled a well in eastern Kentucky in the Rogersville Shale that came in 115 million cubic feet a day. Now, that Rogersville Shale lies in the Rome Trough, which runs through eastern Kentucky up through Mason, Putnam, Wayne, Jackson County, West Virginia. And so the folks that have not been directly impacted by the Marcellus production are definitely going to be impacted by the Utica. So if you take the choice of doing nothing, then you have forced pooling on all of that strata that's below the Onondaga limestone.
Is that because that's going to be vertical drilling?
No, those are horizontal wells. But it's under the Onondaga, and if you look at the production on those Utica wells, 4 to 5 times the Marcellus at probably 2 times the cost. So you don't need a master or PhD in economics to figure out where the production is going to be in the future. So if we're going to look to the future, we better be doing something about that. And West Virginia is the number 2 energy producing state in this nation. And this nation is the number 2 producing nation in the world. So we're sitting on an awful lot of energy, both coal and natural gas. And we already understand the importance of coal and the impact of not being able to develop the coal resources as we have in the past. And now we've got an opportunity to develop these natural gas resources, and we need to do that in a responsible fashion that protects the landowner, protects the mineral owner, but allows development, again, in a responsible fashion.
What do you do?
So how do we deal with, coming back to your original question, and I know I've kind of gone around the barn to get there, but coming back to that original question, this is not a taking. And I think the folks that have been against this proposal in the past are beginning to realize that if you do nothing, you have a significant larger personal property issue than what you have with this bill in place.
I think the other thing, Woody, is there is a procedure, a rather complicated procedure that's being used by some drillers that leads to make a long story short, that leads to a forced sale of the mineral rights on the courthouse square, which nobody's happy with.
Absolutely true. The partition process, which has been put in place in the past really to deal with surface issues, is now being used for mineral estates. And as you say, that in many cases, or perhaps in most cases, leads to a sale of the total minerals. And the individual like myself, perhaps, that's sitting here on a farm with some minerals under it that I may own a piece of, I can't afford to compete with the deep pockets, and so I end up losing everything I've got with respect to my minerals.
All right, we're going to take a break and come back. Delegate Woody Ireland is with us, Republican, Ritchie County. He's chairman of the House Energy Committee, taking another crack at forced pooling, lease integration. The new legislation is called the Horizontal Well Utilization and Landowner Protection Act. We'll continue with Delegate Ireland right after this.
Every day, Americans commute to work, charge their phones, and do a number of things that require reliable energy. But how often do we take a moment to stop and consider where our energy comes from? One source of abundant American energy is natural gas. With natural gas, America is on a path toward a better energy future. This is Inside Shale.
Inside Shale continues with Delegate Woody Ireland, Republican from Ritchie County, and Woody is chair of the House Energy Committee and co-chair of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy. They're working on not only a forced pooling lease integration bill, but also something called the Oil and Gas Royalty Payment and Transparency Act. Now, that'll make more sense when I tell you what it's been nicknamed. That is the check stub bill. The check stub bill. Woody, what is the check stub bill, and why is it important?
Well, Hoppy, there's 2 or 3 reasons, I think, for that, and we're kind of calling that a companion bill, and it addresses some of the things that mineral owners have been concerned about, either rightly or wrongly, and in most cases those are concerned believe it is right. But it applies to the transparency of, as a mineral owner, am I getting paid the right amount of money? Mm-hmm. And it talks about some things having to do with, number one, timely reporting of the production, which is currently done through DEP, but it's 12 to 14 months perhaps behind the actual production. So if I want to know, as an example, how much gas is coming out of a lateral under my property, the company is willing to tell me, or I'm willing to go through a court process or so forth, I've got to wait to get to DEP's webpage, and that production may not be reported for a period of 12 to 14 months after the actual production. So part of what this bill says is, okay, guys, you need to report that on a quarterly basis. Now, most of the companies all have that on computers and so forth currently, and with today's technology, obviously. So we really don't think that's a particular burden on the industry to report that on a timely basis. So at least at that point, I can go to the DEP's webpage and look and see what the well did, 3 months ago, mm-hmm. which is generally the payment period anyway. Secondly, it talks about the timely payment of royalties. And in some cases, folks feel like their money is being held for an inordinate amount of time. And there may be some good reasons for that in some cases, but generally speaking, what we're saying is you should be paid for your royalty within at least a 90-day period, or you are owed an additional interest on top of that royalty. And that's aimed at preventing companies from saying, we'll basically hold the mineral owners 1/8 or 15% or whatever the royalty rate is, and use that money interest free.
Right.
And then there has been some concern amongst folks about who calibrates the meters. And most of these transactions, obviously, are made at arm's length, supposedly. And if the producer is selling to one of the transmission companies, they're getting paid on the transmission company's meter, and then the mineral owner is getting paid their portion of that. And so the developing company is going to make sure that the transmission company's meter is correct. But there's still some question about who makes sure that those meters are correct. And we're talking about pretty significant volumes here, obviously. If I just talked about here a while ago, where in a Marcellus you're talking about 10 million cubic feet a day.
So this ensures the calibration of the meters, is that correct?
Yeah, it's aimed at the calibration of the meter. If you go to the local gas station this morning and put gas in your car, how do you know you get a gallon of gas when it says it's a gallon of gas? Mm-hmm. Well, there's a sticker on that pump that says the Bureau of Weights and Measures. Somebody checked it at some point in time.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So those are the types of things that this particular bill is aimed at.
Well, I know, Woody, let me just interrupt you, Woody, because we got to leave it there, but there will be a lot to talk about this coming legislative session with these 2 companion bills, one having to do with some additional disclosure on royalty checks, and the other, which certainly there will be debate about.
The country's top mines are using natural gas to cut costs, improve their carbon footprint, As the best and brightest turn to natural gas, we should all think about using more natural gas to meet our power generation demands. According to Penn State, the switch to natural gas was a big step toward cleaner and more sustainable energy sources. This is Inside Shale.
Inside Shale continues. Columbia Pipeline Group, CPG, operates more than 15,700 miles of natural gas pipelines serving customers in more than 16 states, including West Virginia. Scott Castleman is with Columbia Pipeline Group and joins us on Inside Shale. Scott, good morning. Good to talk to you. How are you?
Good morning, Hoppy. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Let's talk about a couple of the projects that CPG is involved in. The Mountaineer Express Pipeline. What's the Mountaineer Express Pipeline?
Sure. So Mountaineer Express Pipeline is approximately 165 miles of 36-inch pipeline traveling from Marshall County, West Virginia, to Cabell County, West Virginia. Along the line, there will be 3 new compressor stations that will allow us to move about 2.7 billion cubic feet of gas per day and be an investment of about $2 billion.
Mm-hmm. Where is Columbia on the construction of that pipeline?
So right now we're in the FERC pre-filing process, which is mainly an outreach process where we hosted open houses earlier this fall, and we have been meeting with legislators and local elected officials to educate them on the project and talk about all the details and get their feedback.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say we're looking at FERC application, filing our FERC application in April of 2016, which would allow us to begin construction hopefully fall of 2017.
Mm-hmm. And completed by?
Looking at in-service in fourth quarter of 2018.
2018. And so this would run sort of essentially along the Ohio River down to Cabell County.
Sure. Yeah. Looking at starting in Marshall County and traveling down into Cabell County where it ties into our existing system.
Okay. So what was the need for the pipeline?
Well, I think that a lot of times right now there's a misconception that companies are building pipelines or seeking these pipelines before the need is determined, and that's just not the case. With pipelines of this nature, we're listening to what our customers need for outlets for Marcellus and Utica gas, and we're helping them provide those outlets. So on a project like this, at this point, we are sold out of capacity. We're meeting their demands, and so any type of project like this, the demand is met or identified before construction even begins.
What's it intersect with in Cabell County, Scott, and where does it go from there?
It intersects with our current SM80 system, and we'll go to our pooling area at the West Virginia Kentucky border, and from there it can be sent south. It can be sent to other parts of the region, West Virginia, Ohio, Virginia, but at that point it can be sent a lot of different directions.
Is this a new pipeline or an entirely new route or replacement of an existing pipeline?
Yes, Mountaineer Express is a completely new route.
Okay. What is the WB Express pipeline?
Sure. So on WB, you're looking at a little different project. The WB system is one of our systems that's been in place for over 60 years. It currently transports the name WB stands for Washington Baltimore. It transports gas to the Washington Baltimore markets predominantly. But on this one, you're looking at enhancing the capacity by 1.3 billion cubic feet a day. The current capacity is around 2.3 billion cubic feet, but we're enhancing capacity by making upgrades to the current line. So you're only looking at about 26 miles of pipeline replacement and only about 2.9 miles of new pipeline installation on this one. So kind of a creative solution to meeting the needs of producers without having to build an entirely new pipeline.
What's the geography of that? Where's that being done?
It's kind of starts, the WB system starts in Kanawha County in that region and goes up through the eastern panhandle over to Virginia. So you're looking at kind of cutting across the state from toward going east.
Like Mountaineer, is that pending before the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission?
Sure. So we're closer to filing our FERC application on WB Express. That is, should be done before the end of the year. But you're still looking at a 2018 in-service date on that one.
Okay, Scott Castleman is with us. He's manager of external communications with Columbia Pipeline Group, CPG. Scott, stay with us. When we come back, I want to talk about some of the modernization programs that CPG is involved with in West Virginia. So that when Inside Shale continues.
Schools in the Marcellus Shale region, such as Westmoreland County Community College, Pennsylvania College of Technology, West Virginia Northern Community College, Eastern Gateway Community College in Ohio, and Broome Community College in New York came together and formed Marcellus Shale Net, a recruitment, training, placement, and retention program for high-priority occupations in the natural gas industry. You're listening to Inside Shale.
Inside Shale continues. We're talking with Scott Castleman, who's manager of external communications for Columbia Pipeline Group. And Columbia Pipeline is currently engaged in a modernization program to upgrade the pipelines in West Virginia and across its system. And there was a notable failure of a pipeline in 2012, December 2012. There was a gas pipeline that had been corroded. And according to the National Transportation Safety Board, the corrosion and problems with the line led to an explosion along I-77. Folks remember that story from 2012. It was a 20-inch gas pipeline that was rather old and corroded. Right now, Columbia Pipeline is involved in a modernization program to try to improve the infrastructure. Scott, is the modernization program in response to what happened in 2012?
Well, I think that the modernization program as a whole is in response to taking care of all of the infrastructure that we have in the ground. So the growth projects get a lot of the headlines. They're the sexier piece of the industry right now. But you look at our system, and our growth projects combined will make up a few hundred miles, where we have over 15,000 miles of pipeline currently in the ground. So back in 2012, in that time frame, we were looking at ways to proactively upgrade and enhance our system and increase safety, efficiency, and our emissions. So we went to our customers and we said, look, we need your help on this. I think our competitors and FERC both thought we were a little crazy at the time, but we got their buy-in. And so between 2013 and 2017, we're investing $1.5 billion in modernizing our system. So you're looking at replacing bare steel pipeline. You're looking at installing new compressor units at existing facilities and leaving the current units there to use as backup horsepower, and also installing launchers and receivers so that we can do a better job of doing inline inspections and keeping a better eye on our system.
Is there also, Scott, is any of that, and I'll defer to you on this, but do you have any improvement or upgrade in automatic shutoffs, which I think was an issue in 2012, wasn't it?
Sure. So our pipeline system, actually all 15,000 miles of it is monitored at our Gas Control Monitoring Center right in Charleston, West Virginia. So that's another large piece of our West Virginia presence. But we do have those capabilities on our system, and we're constantly looking at ways that we can improve and do a better job of responding to incidents as they occur.
Got it. All right. Scott Castleman, who is manager of external communications for Columbia Pipeline Group. Scott, it's good to speak with you. Thanks for coming on Inside Shale.
Thanks for having me.
All right, man. Appreciate your time. When we come back, Corky DeMarco, who is the executive director of the West Virginia Oil and Natural Gas Association, on safety in the industry and more. That when Inside Shale continues.
Every day, Americans commute to work, charge their phones, and do a number of things that require reliable energy. But how often do we take a moment to stop and consider where our energy comes from? One source of abundant American energy is natural gas. With natural gas, America is on a path toward a better energy future. This is Inside Shale.
Final few minutes on Inside Shale, joined by Corky DeMarco, Executive Director of the West Virginia Oil and Natural Gas Association. Corky, thanks for joining us. I know you've been involved, I think, in a recent safety conference. Is that correct?
Yes, Hoppy, we've been attending the Safety Commission meetings that the governor established at the last State of the State.
What was foremost in the discussion there?
Well, I think Hoppy, the state and particularly the executive branch wants to make sure that the oil and gas industry is participating in a general way that we are protecting not only workers but the public. So I think going through a lot of meetings, educating the administration on what exactly we're currently doing, and involving the commission involved the fire marshal, Office of Emergency Services, Department of Highways, DEP, PSC. So we talked about, and the governor will receive a report from the commission outlining steps moving forward. A couple of real significant things are suggesting the governor propose legislation to require all gas lines to be part of the 811 call before you dig program, and also that the oil and gas industry is part of the 15-minute requirement for notification to the emergency services folks if we've had an accident that has bodily injury and or a threat to the public.
Like the chemical plant requirement, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And as a representative of the industry, do you guys support that?
Well, Hoppy, there are some issues with it. There's conflicting requirements that are in place by the Department of Environmental Protection. It is, their requirements are we mitigate and then we notify. And in a lot of cases, we are in very rural areas, may not have cell service, unlike a coal prep plant or a coal mine or a installation to manufacture something. We may not have landline coverage. So that's problematic, but I'm sure we can work through those things. All this this report's going to be a framework. I'm sure there'll be more discussion as we go forward.
Corky DeMarco is with us, Executive Director of the West Virginia Oil and Natural Gas Association. What's the latest industry news? Any change in price of note?
Unfortunately, Hoppy, it is in the tank right now.
Continues to be.
It continues to be. We're in the 225 to 230 to 215 range per MCF, and it appears, from everything I've been reading and talking to people, this is probably not going to change for a while. We just have too much supply and no outlets for our supply.
Do you think that will change? We talked earlier about the pipeline. I mean, there's a lot of pipeline construction that's going on. There's pipeline upgrade that's going on. We just talked with Columbia about the couple of the pipeline they're building from Marshall County to Huntington. We know about other pipelines under construction. The completion dates on those, 2017, 2018. When that's done, will that change anything on price, do you think, or production?
I'm sure it will help, Hoppy, but I don't think we're ever going to see $5 and $6 gas prices again. We're getting, as Delegate Ireland suggested to the listeners earlier, we're getting such huge volumes out of these shale formations. They're producing in one day what a real good vertical well would produce in a year. So, we need more manufacturing in the United States. We need to begin to export LNG to our friends around the world. All those things are going to help, but it's going to take some time to get these prices back up.
Finally, Corky, does the West Virginia Oil and Natural Gas Association support the lease integration, force pooling, whatever term of art we're going to use in the upcoming session, legislation?
Absolutely, Hoppy. I mean, that's the only way we're going to maximize what our resources are. What we don't want to do, and I don't think the people of West Virginia want to see happen, is strand a natural resource that can be used to increase jobs, provide for national security, for energy, and all the things that we have talked about with a national energy plan. Now we have the opportunity. We have to maximize this resource.
And it usually, as you know, being a veteran from under the Capitol Dome, it comes down to counting heads. Last session, it failed on a tie vote in the House with an odd coalition of conservative Republicans and liberal Democrats. Will you round up the extra votes?
Hoppy, I think any time you wait for a bill to go down to the last couple hours of the session, you know, a lot of people who feel aggrieved or constituents aggrieved during the session take revenge by holding up legislation or voting against legislation. Hopefully, what we'll do is move this bill along, however it looks, move it along quickly, and not wait until the fat possums come out at night on the last night.
Because there was a lot of work during the session on the bill last year, so you're saying that there's a jump this year because the bill's ready now.
Well, I think that's absolutely true, Hoppy. And you know, we had 14 people who voted for the bill in the late morning, early afternoon of the last day, and they switched their votes at 10 o'clock on that Saturday evening.
You know, when you get to the legislature, it's all about counting the votes, and counting them twice, and knowing who's telling you, when they're telling you something, they're actually going to act that way. All right, Corky DeMarco, Executive Director, West Virginia Oil and Natural Gas Association. Corky, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Hoppy.
All right, man. Yeah, we will watch that closely. Legislative session begins in early January. Inside Shale will be there. Metro News will be there to follow it closely to see what happens with that and other legislation. Inside Shale, a paid presentation of the West Virginia Oil and Natural Gas Association on West Virginia Radio Corporation stations. So long, everybody.